I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that some of us are meeting on today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that each of the participants is on. Welcome to this hangout today, where we hear from Dasha Mayarova and Stephanie Dania from Sutherland Library. This follows the seminar in May 2015, looking at makers and craftivists, and the hangout with Libraries Incubator Project from July 2015. Welcome to the libraries who are participating via the hangout today, the other library people who are watching live online, or catching up with this later on. I would like to thank the New South Wales Reference and Information Services Group for the use of their YouTube channel. If you're tweeting about this or posting to other social media, please use the hashtag NSWPLN2016. Now you can post questions via Twitter or the email list, and these will then be conveyed to Dasha and Steph. But over now to Dasha and Steph. Thank you very much.
Sorry, are we actually on the screen? This is going to be the most embarrassing time to ask.
We can see you.
Oh, lovely. Oh, sorry, we didn't pop up.
I shut up and keep my microphone. You come and start talking. You come on the screen.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Ellen. All right. So thanks, Ellen, and hello to everybody who's watching. So as introduced, my name's Dasha, and this is Steph, and we're librarians at Sutherland Shire Libraries. On my side, I've been here for about 4 years, just doing various roles. I'm actually based up in collection services, but since having the opportunity to work on the makerspace, I tend to do a few other things. My background is actually, I was a creative arts person at university, so it's a little bit different to the sort of segue into libraries. And Steph's got an interesting background as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my background's event management and design, so it's kind of good that I'm here, and it's a lot of fun to work on this kind of project in a library, because who would have thunk you could?
Yeah. So today we wanted to sort of give you a little bit of a virtual demo, I guess, of the makerspace, how it works, what equipment we have, and also how we got to where we are. We're still a little bit of a fledgling makerspace in that we only had our third official meeting yesterday, and even though it's after the public holiday, we still had a pretty good turnout, and it's always been a very interactive, mixed sort of session as well. So to begin with, just to give a bit of an explanation as to how our makerspace started, we were kind of, the idea was pitched to us. I don't think we're not the ones that came up with the concept. I think just the idea of makerspace is becoming more prevalent in libraries. Sort of was offered to us, and for us we began to play around with the idea of what we could actually accommodate here at Sutherland. Interestingly enough, the research side of it started around I don't want to use the word restrictions, but there's certain parameters we had to work with. So at Sutherland, for instance, we don't have a dedicated makerspace. So we decided we'd treat it a little bit more like a pop-up makerspace. And pop-ups are, of course, quite, it's a trendy idea. It's also very flexible. We could adapt it to different equipment and different staff members' strengths and things like that. And the other sort of parameter we had, of course, was budget. And I think every library would have, library organisation, every sort of makerspace is always going to have that issue. So with the budget, we had, I think I'm allowed to say this, I think we had about $7,000 to work with, and that was to cover everything from equipment, consumables, basically all the setup costs, our launch night, all of it. We were lucky that the staff we have, Steph and I and some other staff members are quite adventurous and willing to experiment with technology and with kind of forging our own path and experimenting with things in order to get them to work. And so we found that our intention with the makerspace here at Sutherland would be one where we mixed up high and low tech craft and technology. So at Sutherland, we've had quite a lot of interest in technology. We actually have a range of taming technology classes and courses, and they're mostly populated by older older people, often seniors, but they've always got an interest in new technologies and what's around. The other side of it is we have a lot of interest in crafts, and we've had, everything: candle making, upcycling, zine making, all kinds of things. So we thought those were our strengths. So if we combined them, what could we come up with? Another thing to address was the idea of, with this technology, even though we weren't that familiar with it, how could we make it accessible to people? So how could we make, for instance, 3D printing accessible to somebody who's never seen a 3D printer, who's never seen one before, who doesn't know how to use it, who thinks that it's completely out of their world. So that's how we started. As I mentioned, the initial spend covered things like the 3D printer, which is actually going on behind us. We tested it before to see if the sound was too loud, and hopefully it's not really getting in the way. It's got this quite funky sci-fi atmosphere sort of thing. So yeah, it covered the 3D printer. It covered other tech that we have, like we've got a sewing machine, we've got an overlocker, we have iPads, a Wi-Fi capable printer, and then paper circuit and e-textile supplies. And that we can show you those later, but that covers stuff like copper tape, electroconductive thread. Oh, we've got a question that's come up, which is, what 3D printer do you have? Our baby, our lovely little 3D printer, it's actually a Lulzbot Tas 5. And the reason that we got this one was after a lot of research. I'll actually show you the research folder that I brought down specially. It's bulkier than it looks. And it's sort of like our Bible of everything. And it's, we look back on it, and I like to see where we came from to what we have. So the Tas 5, it's actually, I believe it's an American machine, but it's completely open source software and hardware. So what that's meant is, and when we pick up the machine, the computer, to have a bit of a closer look at it, what that's meant is that we can use any sort of software that we'd like in order to slice or send our prints through. We can also use whatever filament we like. And what's come up really handily, surprisingly enough, is that we can actually mod it. And as I mentioned, we do have staff members that are quite handy and just tech savvy and adventurous with this sort of stuff. So one of the mods we've made is the way the filament feeds into the printer. The Lulzbot community actually will make the files available for you to print these parts yourself and put them in. So we've actually got a spare hot end that we've constructed is ready at the go, in the horrible chance that something happens to it. But it's also been an interesting experience in seeing how it works by replicating it, essentially. So part of the other reasons that we chose the Tas 5 is that it's got quite a large print bed, so we can be quite adventurous with what we are printing on it, and also the speed. So it's quite a fast one. It's got quite a good detail. We've managed to get really beautiful prints with it, but in the event that we need to print a couple of things at once quite quickly, we can do that. And at the moment, what it's actually printing is some prints that we had teenagers make up for us at last week's Teen Makerspace boot camp. So this was a school holiday activity where teenagers that have never worked with 3D design or like CAD design or 3D printers before have actually come up and made their own designs using Tinkercad. And another question, so do we print in ABS or PLA? We can actually print with both, so that's another funky thing about the Tas. It's not the most fun thing to switch between the filaments, as we discovered recently. I mean, we've got to switch them quite often, but the event of a clog, because the two types of plastics have quite different chemical properties, it means that the melting point of one is quite higher than the other one. So if you've got a little bit of leftover ABS in the thing, any printed tinkerer will know that it's not that fun to clear it. But yeah, we have the ability to print with both, and depending on what the project calls for, we can actually switch between them. So yeah, so that's what we're printing at the moment. And I mean, if we've got time, we can always talk a little bit more about how the boot camp went. You're welcome. So now the last reason, and I actually find this to be quite an interesting reason why this printer, is that it's got quite an open design. So when people see it, interestingly enough, they see it walking past and they think it's a sewing machine. They think it's one of these old-timey sort of Singer sewing machines. Because it's so open, it's not encased in your traditional sort of metal casing. You can see the working parts, and people have a greater understanding of how the 3D process, how the machine actually works, and that's useful. It's not just kids that are walking past finding that interesting, but everybody. We did have a case made up for it, and again, this came out of that budget. We did have a acrylic case custom made for it, and a trolley that we've ordered for it that it sits on, so we can, it's portable. We wheel it around. A few people have mentioned it's quite a bit bigger than most printers they've seen, and that lets us print bigger objects. But it is encased, so people aren't going to be able to put their fingers into the hot end or anything like that. So what happened after we got all this stuff? Of course, there were a few months when we're putting it together, playing around with all this stuff, figuring out how e-textiles work, how paper circuits work. Any costs? Okay, sorry, there was another question that came up. Any cost for printing? So currently our makerspace operates completely freely. People can come in. There's no bookings, nothing like that. We're hoping it can stay that way as long as we can. I think in the future, especially with the new financial year coming up, we may have to charge for the cost of consumables. It will be, of course, the cost of the consumables themselves in terms of the 3D printer are quite low, so there might be a nominal charge for the time it takes. But in essence, I think we do have a 3D printing policy. It's available on our website, and we have it on display during our makerspace meetings. The idea of the printing and the program that we do, and I always like to emphasize this to anybody that has inquiries about the printer, is that we're not a 3D printing service. So people that have a lot of experience with printing, and they can have different expectations of what we're going to be doing with them. We're not a commercial service, and we can refer them on to places like 3D Hubs and other cool places that'll print whatever you need especially for your professional uses. But the idea of what we're doing with our 3D printer is we're really trying to help people sort of get into it at that really entry level who may not have access to it at another time, and give them the confidence to use it. And then when they have the flow of it and the understanding of it, that they can take that to the next level. And we've got one gentleman actually that's come in that started with one of our CAD beginner classes and has actually come to so far all the makerspaces, and at each one of them he's got something new. And he's actually an older man who has who's designed these actual practical things from scratch. So with my art background, I tend to like the ornamental parts, the really pretty things you can actually print, but he's actually created replacement handles for his knife that have broken. He's got an air conditioner cover that he's made, and we've posted this on our blog as well. One of them I titled something like 3D printing can save your vacuum cleaner, and I replicated that because at the same time my vacuum cleaner had broken. So it's problem solving that I never thought somebody would come up and say, look, I need to figure out how to design this replacement part for my vacuum cleaner in order to get this thing going, so you don't have to throw out an expensive, machine. So in terms of what the prices might be in the future, I'm not sure what it is, but as far as what we've discussed thus far is that it'll just be the nominal cost, and we're using it just to cover what our consumables cost to us. So after we've tinkered and gotten all our equipment, our next step was we had a launch. This was late last year. It was kind of like a bit of a party sort of thing. We had in our Southern Lounge space. We had sample stations of all of our main kind of activities. So we had 3D printing, we had badge making, e-textiles, paper circuits, and sort of staff at each of these stations creating things, and then people coming around, having a snack and being able to create little things themselves as well is on the night as well, and being able to take that home with them. And I think someone's just posted it up. Yeah, thank you very much. So we actually have two policies on the website. We've got our 3D printing policy, and we've also got our fair use guide. So what that covers is just it's meant to make people understand what the point of the makerspace is before they come in, and not sort of feel too freaked out about what are the rules, can I come in or not. It's quite free. It's things there like be safe, be respectful to your other makers, and things like that. At the launch, I can't quite recall the numbers, but I think we had we had at least 100 people come in. It was a very, very busy night, and that's everybody coming in, learning about the printer and the e-textiles and all these other activities we had coming in. So it was a really successful event. As a result of that, our next step was to have a series of Makerspace Essentials sessions. So the aim of this, and I'm still trying to figure out if that was the best way to go about it, really, because the aim was that these Essentials sessions were booked events where people would come in and learn how to use the equipment and get some practical experience with them and have enough confidence so that they could come back and use them freely in their own time. I think they worked very well. Like we were booked out in the CAD session, which we had the 3D printing design session. We actually booked out, had to run an on-call class, which also booked out. However, we haven't seen as many people turn up from those classes as I think we were initially expecting. So it's just an interesting way to go about it. Like, people, I think, are more used to, at Sutherland, coming to structured workshops and knowing what is going to be on, what time. You book, you've got your ticket and you come in, rather than these sort of open, kind of open play sessions that Makerspace essentially is. So as I mentioned, the first one we had was the CAD 3D printing, which sold out. It was really great to see a mix of ages. We really did have, so our Makerspace is for 16 and over. We have run some special events for younger teenagers and also some children, child-friendly events. And I think in the future we will be doing more of those. But at this CAD session, we did have literally everybody from 16 to 80. And I think we had about 80% males in the group, which I think is notoriously, in libraries, it's quite a female-heavy group often, in terms of the visitors that come to our workshop. So that was really nice to see, and it really was in the sharing sort of spirit of Makerspace. You had people next to each other that didn't know each other, sort of helping out. How do I get that? I've lost, I've missed a step. Take me back through that. So that was really nice to see. And the same thing actually came about in our next Makerspace Essentials session, which was about paper circuits. So I always used to think paper circuits, and so Joy's on the, in our hangout here, Joy Solomon, who I initially learned paper circuits from at a workshop, and they always seem to work really well when you go to other places. Somehow we didn't have the same amount of luck at ours, and I found that so I'm notoriously mistrusting of paper circuits now. I still love them. I still love to experiment with them, and they're a really great way to get started when you play around with electronics. However, I found that I think I have a greater liking for e-textiles now, but Steph will talk a bit about them because that's like her specialty. But the plus side of the little hiccups we had during our during our paper circuit session was a tool bag, a solder my thing to work. So a gentleman that was there helped me solder my piece down. I'd never soldered before. I have an interest in it, but it always sort of seemed like the sort of thing I'll push it off and try to learn it later. But it helped and it worked, and he was showing other people, and it was really fabulous because that wasn't something we'd structured or planned. It was like an option. It was a tool that was sitting there. If somebody wanted to try that out and incorporate that into their circuit, they could. So yeah, that was really lovely to see. So I'll hand over to Steph now, who'll talk a little bit more about e-textiles and how we run more of the day-to-day Makerspace program. And
so for our e-textiles workshop, for all of our workshops, the introductory ones, we developed a project, like a starter project that was pretty easy. So for e-textiles, we made a little bag that was for a tablet computer, and because we have a sewing machine and overlocker in the Makerspace, we wanted to incorporate sewing machine, overlocker, and e-textiles together just to give everyone that full experience. So we got everyone to supply their main fabric. We supplied all the e-textiles components and the machinery. And beforehand, we actually got a few staff members together and sat down one afternoon, like people with different sewing skills, to see if we could complete the project in the amount of time that was allocated. And we could, which was great because we didn't have to revise anything. And that worked really well. I think on the night we had, okay. So we've just got a question here if we're using lily pad or Adafruit. We use Lilypad at the time. Adafruit is something I might work up to in the future, but at the moment I'm still sort of getting my skills up to scratch. Yeah, so one of the things, there are a few things we found with the e-textiles. Always test your batteries before your workshop. Test your LEDs in different colour combinations because they don't always play nice together, as we found out when someone tried to use blue. It's not very friendly. Basic sewing skills aren't essential, but it does help. And needle threaders are great, but make sure you buy quality ones because conductive thread is quite tough on them. So that was the e-textiles workshop. And our monthly meetups, which we have on the last Tuesday of every month, we have 2 spaces here at Sutherland. We've got either a small meeting room or we've got a larger lounge area. Last night we used our meeting room, which we're in now, because we were expecting a smaller group post-public holiday, but occasionally when we're expecting a larger group, we'll set up in the Southern Lounge, and that works quite well because everyone has space to work. We have 3 staff members at each event, so we have a 3D printer guru because that's very important. Everyone wants to know everything about the 3D printer. We normally have someone who can do some electronics, so whether it's paper circuits, regular soldering, or e-textiles, just someone who has a bit of an idea about that. And someone who's a bit of a jack of all trades is really helpful too, because you need someone who knows how to fix the badge maker or show people how to use the badge maker.
Fix the overlocker.
Yeah, make sure you have more than one person who can thread an overlocker, because they're pretty tricky. What else do I need to say? We have at this stage a core group of about 7 regulars, and that's really great because they're totally into the spirit. They come along, they work on their projects, but they share, and it's really awesome to see. 3D printer is still a really big draw card. We have a lot of people coming in just to have a look at it, which is cool because it gets them thinking about what they can do. Had a few things to say about the meetup.
Yeah, so we do have that really nice core group, as Steph mentioned. It's about 7 of them, but we have other people sort of dropping in and out. Most of the people that do come from our regulars. It's hard to say regular because, as I said, we've had 3 actual meetups, but they did come from our essentials sessions. So that is interesting that there was that success. It'd be nice to get, of course, the more people you have, the more chance you have to collaborate and have a really sort of vibrant space. We have found that, especially at this early time, that it's manageable with these sort of numbers, and until it becomes a bit more self-sustaining, I think it's a pretty good thing to have. So, for instance, if you're troubleshooting a 3D print, they've brought in their file, but there might be something wrong with it, or you're making suggestions how to use it. It can take a while. We sort of, as I mentioned, it's a pop-up space, so we're setting up. We've got our sort of 2 hours of this really intensive kind of making session, and then and then it's sort of over. And that, that's again, it's that idea of parameters and what we've got to work with. That's the time that we have. And yeah, so far it's working really well. I would like to see a little bit more of that, sort of 16 to 24 age group, which would be really cool. And I'm not sure if all libraries sort of have that difficulty of engaging with that age group and getting them in here, but we certainly have been. And it was really great then to have such a successful teen event last week, and so many of them coming in and being really enthusiastic about it. But I'm not sure if somehow just that the element of it being drop-in space that you can come in, it's maybe they don't quite understand that concept yet, but it's something definitely that we can work on as we go on in the future. So the other funky thing that Steph's been majorly responsible for is actually Instagram. So I might let her talk it out, and I'll just screen share the page in case anybody hasn't seen it.
So we have an Instagram account for Makerspace. It's exclusively Makerspace because the decision was made that our library has a lot of social media channels already, and it really didn't need another. So Makerspace was exclusively going to be on Instagram. Also, the makerspace aesthetic works so well with Instagram. Like, it's a really visual medium, so it suits it. We decided to use Instagram mainly to share and document what's being made, and also to promote the monthly meetups. Ideally, we're hoping to reach makers within the local community, but because we want them to come along, really. But at the moment, we're getting a lot of international likes or maker groups and businesses, which is awesome. Like, we're so happy with that, because it means that we're sort of in the right.
I wasn't sharing it. Sorry.
Oh dear, sorry. Dash is just trying to share the Instagram.
I thought it was sharing, and I was like scrolling down so artistically. I apologise. Okay.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of sort of maker businesses and maker groups from international. We're getting some local likes, which is good. I think at the moment we're averaging about 1 new follower a day, which we're pretty pleased with. We, of course, like everyone, do want to increase our likes and our followers, but we made the decision that we're not going to do like for like. We want it to be, like, have purpose. And yeah, that's that. What else have I got? One other thing with Instagram is we decided that it was all going to be original content. So every photo you see, we've made the stuff, we've taken the photo. We just wanted to keep it all original. When we first started with Instagram, we were aiming for 2 to 3 posts a week. It is a lot of work for one person if you do have other library jobs to do. So we did try sharing it for a little while, but that didn't quite work because we'd both get busy at the same time, so our posting was really sporadic.
Yeah.
So we decided that I'd take it on full time, do the regular posting, and Dasha, when she comes across something really fun and exciting, she'll post that, or when she's going mad on the 3D printer, she'll spam it with 3D printing, which is great because people respond really well to the 3D printing videos. I spend about an hour a day each week getting our posts together. That is very good. It used to take me a lot longer than that. Because it was such a big job, and remembering to do it like the 2 to 3 posts a week was a bit of a struggle at times. I started using Latagram, which lets me sort of get everything sort of in that hour. I can get everything set up, and it sends a reminder to my phone when it's time to post, and that's been really helpful. It's sort of streamlined the process a lot. And yeah, I think that's all there is with Instagram. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's been really handy to use as a documentation tool, because otherwise it's a sort of, when you get caught up in it, we find that, we've forgotten to take photos, we've forgotten to, really keep a record of what we've been doing, and it has been so useful. So to have that as our aim for it, it has actually come in really handy. So we might do a little bit of a walk around and show you some of our equipment, and then we'll unplug everything, and hopefully it's not gonna. It's a pretty good computer, so it shouldn't die. But if anybody is having issues, we'll post a little message and we'll keep track of it. So we'll start off with our 3D printer. So this is Tassie, at least that's what we call him. So he's currently printing this is actually a little character. The computer that runs it, we've got him here. We're actually just using a basic Cura program on him. So, but it's a bit creepy if we personalize it a bit too much. Yeah, so again, this is something that one of the teens last week had come up with. It's just a little character. Cura is a free sort of slicing printing software. Go slowly, please. Yes, so we've got to go slow so it doesn't mash up. Sure. Okay. Yeah, so this is it. It actually is capable of printing with an SD card, but otherwise we normally print using our dedicated computer. Does the printer have a name? We call him Tassie, and we really do. And I hope that's not too creepy, actually. But we do. We have to admit it. We play with him a lot. And actually, everybody in the library has been really enthusiastic about the 3D printer ever since we got it. It was kind of like a big unveiling, all the staff members going up, checking him out. Yeah, so, and it's been such a big learning learning process for all of us. So yeah, quite important to us. So what else is there to say about Tassie? Yeah, we often have the printer running things beside us at the reference desk, which is actually really handy because it's maybe not as confronting for people to ask questions when it's just there. They'll walk past and say, "Oh, what's that? What's it doing?" Or sometimes they'll just sort of take a sly look, and then I'll accost them and tell them everything they've ever wanted to know about 3D printing and more. So if anybody's got questions about that, please say. We found it to be a really great machine. Oh, the mods that I really love. So originally the filament used to run on a used to sit here at the side of the printer, and you often see that in pictures of the little spot hazards. We've actually made a modification. We've printed these two arms for it to sit on. This is an old chair leg that we've liberated for this purpose, and just because the filament's feeding straight down, it means that it's a more efficient print. You don't, it doesn't risk the chance of something happening to the filament. So it's things like that we've modded. Another thing that I would probably be in trouble if I don't mention is we've got an additional fan head that we've printed, put it on there, helps the printing process because it'll cool down, for instance, with PLA. What else have we got? I'm just checking. This is just our Wi-Fi capable printer. So in terms of people being able to print photos, if they're using them for projects, they can do that. Also, scan and manipulate images for collaging or scrapping and things like that. Our sewing machine and overlocker, which which Steph is the queen of. And it's quite interesting because even though they're quite average, well-known, well-used pieces of equipment, a lot of people don't have sewing machines at home anymore, and people tend to come in and utilize them, or learn how to use them for the first time as well. So that's quite funky, and I do find it really handy to have these sort of traditional pieces of making technology and these new ones. So this is another piece of equipment that we've liberated. This is actually just it's an old trolley. Put one of these things on, I don't know what it used to be, but sort of upcycled an old piece of furniture and put on all of our stuff, and people can just come in and take whatever they need, whether it's some pliers or a file or something like that. Here, as we go around, we've just got some free stuff for crafting. This is all the stuff that we've guiltily hoarded at home for ages, and other stuff members have as well. There's fabric, there's bits of jewelry, there's felt, there's little boxes that used to hold microfilm, which actually are really quite quirky and cute. We've got books. We don't have all of our books, but basically they're discarded books and magazines that people use for upcycling and cutting things out for stuff like our next piece of equipment, which is our badge maker. I remember before we set up the makerspace, people were always talking about using what you have, and this is actually a pretty good example of that, because the badge maker the library hadn't been used for a really long time, was sort of covered in dust and hidden away, and we thought, well, that's kind of perfect for makerspace. And it's something, again, that you don't really have access to day to day. We've got two sizes. It's actually pretty popular because it's so quick. Anybody can use it, whether it's a kid using it or a teenager last week, or even the gentleman that normally comes in with the 3D prints. He actually made a badge last night for his bike club. So that was pretty cool. So as we continue around, we've got we've got like a soldering station. It's a pretty simple soldering iron. It's nothing too fancy. But as I said, they have come in handy. We also do have a hot glue gun, and we make sure that whenever somebody's working on this, that they know how to use it properly, that there's somebody around that is, so it wouldn't be me in that instance, who's had, quite a lot of experience with soldering and knows how to do it safely. Just as a sample, we actually have 4 makerspace iPads, and we've got, apart from using them to do research, look at Thingiverse and stuff like that, we've got a bunch of apps already installed on them, like, I love Autodesk's free apps, including Sculpt, so that will actually let you you can create, in theory, you can create, you know, sort of 3D models, and it uses a sculpting kind of tool in order to create them. So rather than the sort of you know, building block shapes that you use, you can actually sort of drag it across. And so then we have our paper circuit and our e-textiles equipment. So these aren't sort of arranged in pretty boxes, but it's all the basics. So, and we've also started to use resistors when we use electronics as well, which again is something that we actually learnt from our, oh sorry, how did you get them to allow soldering? How is it? Okay, so we just had a question of how did we manage to get soldering included in it? I don't actually know the details about it in terms of insurance. I mean, it's not a highly powerful soldering iron. We do have a safe work statement associated with it. The main thing is that you do have a staff member who's trained and familiar with how to use it, actually working on it with you at the same time. However, the people that have used it so far are so you're not sort of talking to a weird part of my body. So the people that have used it thus far are staff helping people solder things for people that come, for makers in the makerspace. And then we've also had someone come in that's quite, people actually brought in their own soldering irons because theirs is better than ours. And so one guy, for instance, he works at ANSTO, you know, the local science facility, and he, so he's been able to use it and actually teach us how to do it as well. So I think because basically the answer to that question is partially that it's just not as hot or scary as it sounds like it is. So with the rest of the e-textiles and things like that, so that gentleman from ANSTO is actually the one that introduced us to resistors and, you know, using them obviously because LEDs are apparently really energy hungry little critters. And we've just got a range of them, and normally with these, it's even though they're available there, people haven't sort of come in and, you know, grabbed a whole bunch and run off with them. We'll actually take them through a project in order for them to know how to use it. It's, you know, it's quite nice that nobody's, you know, taking advantage of this sort of stuff. We've also started to use, just as an experiment, which I found quite fun, electroconductive paint as well. So this is the bare conductive paint, and that's quite even though it takes a little while to dry, it sometimes has worked a little bit better than the copper tape that we've used. So just following on, our e-textile stuff, again, works in that same sort of, you know, we've just got a box of stuff that people can choose from. When we started out, these things are actually really great. We used, just try to see if you can see it and if there's anything else. The lily pad, what are they called? Proto-snap kits. So I think this is actually called like a lily twinkle thing. Oh, not without a thing, but a lily twinkle kit. And it comes with everything you need to start. And it was a really good introduction into e-textiles. Because Steph, for instance, has the knowledge of how to make stuff, but I don't think she had any experience with e-textiles before. So it was merging those sort of bodies of knowledge. Some of the really beautiful things that, and all credit to these go to Steph, that she's made is, I hope this comes across well in the thing, but in the video, but the eyes actually light up in this work, and it's quite lovely. So that's one of the cases that we made for the Makerspace Essentials, and yeah, so people were able to create those. Everybody left with something actually being complete. And then we've got a range of things that we just sort of have on display, like this happy one. I don't know if you can, it's probably backwards. But yeah, so some of the other stuff that we have here is some of my favorite 3D prints. We tend to have a couple of them on display so people can actually handle them and, you know, get an idea of what the end result will look like. We get a lot of our prints from Thingiverse. Which, if anybody hasn't come across it, it is amazing, and it's a real, you know, it really fits into the makerspace spirit of putting models online, sharing them so that everybody can create them, and then you know, share your results and give some feedback to the creator. So this box, probably pop it back. So We'll just come back so you can see us again.
Apologies if I made anyone seasick just then.
So this is a box of all our PLA offcuts, essentially. So some of it is failed prints, broken prints. I'm making it available in case anybody wants to take it home and sort of experiment with what we can do with it. I would like to, in our makerspace, try to have a system where we have as little waste as possible. So we recycle all our ABS plastic, we keep it, and then whenever we need to melt some ABS with acetone to fill up a print or fix something, we've got that there. Because of the use of acetone, it's not something we do in the makerspace, but we do keep it. PLA has a lower melting point, so in theory, and I haven't tried this yet, but I'd like to experiment with melting it into sheets, and then we can use it for crafts, we can use it for activities and things like that. And we're in our fair use guide, for instance, we tell people, batteries, you have to dispose of them, properly when you have them. Minimize your waste and try to, everything you can with the equipment and the tools that you have. So that sort of covers everything that we were going to talk about. If anybody had any other questions, either about the equipment or how we run it or anything like that. So anything? Someone's typing. Oh, someone's typing. Perhaps unmute. Good idea. Yeah. So feel free to unmute and throw questions at us if you want. Challenging.
Thanks, guys. That was really cool. Can I just jump in?
Please do.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question around how you've managed to engage your community. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How did you initially kind of put stuff out there, and what were your kind of channels for finding people? And 7 people from a handful of sessions is actually a really good core group, so well done. So yeah, I'm interested in how you kind of got that feeling going on.
Yeah. So it started out, look, in the Sutherland Shire, there's really, at least to my knowledge, and I don't think it's, unless someone pops up and tells me now, there's not really any avenues for doing things like 3D printing for the public, at least. So some schools around here do have it. One of the first sort of sparks of interest that the public had was that our local paper, the St. George and Sutherland Shire Leader, actually did a story on us when we got the printer. And that got a lot of interest for people who were going to our makerspace launch and also those initial CAD sessions. So that was really the spark of it, and mainly it was really the 3D printer that was the kind of draw card. Even though we try to, we're always trying to remind people it's a tool in the in the arsenal. It's like it's a tool. That's not the program. So there was that. I think the makerspace launch did quite a bit for it. We've got a good subscription to our e-newsletter for the library, which I think that drew a lot of people. Really, it was just interest, and I think it was because we were offering something that isn't around here. And the thing that I'm always really I don't know if encouraged is the right word, happy about or trying to tap into is the idea that people, it's not just somebody who's older that might not have come across this equipment. There is a huge gap between somebody that's post high school at the moment, who may completely miss it and not have any kind of interaction with this sort of technology. And even in the case of these schools that have it, I've had lots of kids come up and ask me questions about the printer, and I'll ask them, oh, have you guys created anything at school? Do you have a printer there? Often it's the case that it might be that you have to be a senior student and you also have to do design and tech, or one of those classes in order to have access to it. So if I was in high school at the moment, I wouldn't have access to it. I didn't do design tech. I wasn't interested in math. I wasn't interested in engineering. I didn't really think that it seemed a bit, it just was outside of my area of interest. And I think, I mean, the way these technologies work now is it really bridges that gap. And that's the sort of people that we'd love to call in, people that are creative, but that think that this is outside of their ability, when really, you know, and we've found out for ourselves that really it is quite possible. So I hope that kind of answers that. But yeah,
Look, I'm all about the evangelizing. Made a career out of it. Yeah, no, thank you. That's a good answer. I guess because my space isn't open yet, and so this is this is top of mind for me, because I'm like, well, you know, I build it, but will they come?
I must admit, every time so far, I have extreme anxiety about people coming. And in fact, that's part of the reason why we had it in the meeting room yesterday, because I thought, no, and I poor Steph and poor other staff members hear me fretting about this all the time. Nobody's going to come. All the usual stuff. Yeah, so we were in the meeting room because we thought, look, it's after the school holidays, it's after the public holiday. People told us last week that they weren't going to make, in the last session, that they weren't going to make it. So we decided to go in here, and it was a bit cramped. Like, even for our turnout, we thought, we don't actually have room to work. So we were, you know, it really is a, you know, you shift into the. And again, that's a benefit of it being a bit of a pop-up. We're not restricted to where things are installed. We can sort of say, oh, well, nobody's using that today. We can, you know, sort of move it aside and work on something together a bit more. Like yesterday, it was quite heavy on the electronics.
Yeah. We had someone build a barometer.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
No idea how they did it. Like, we saw them doing it, but it's an interesting process.
Instructables, probably.
Yes. So,
yeah.
The range of stuff that people come up with themselves is quite, is also quite eye-opening. So there was another question, which was, are we going to take this stuff to the branches? So we have. We started at least with a 3D printer, and I think in the future that's definitely something we'd love to put into practice. Not just the 3D printing, but some of the activities involved with it, and maybe even have, you know, an external sort of satellite makerspace. Of course, it would just be the logistics of moving all the equipment over. The 3D printer, somebody was actually quite surprised that we had gotten it to one of our branches. But, I mean, it's just the logistics of it comes out of the case, goes into a car, we move it over, and one of the delivery drivers takes the trolley over the day before. So it is possible. And it was really great because, again, that was... The purpose of it, we actually had it at one of our branches, Menai Library. We had a group from the local aspect class at a school there, and this was a group of about 10 boys with various Asperger's, sort of conditions. So, and it was really cool because they were really into it, and actually some of them knew a lot more about the technology and use of 3D printing than I did, and others were just kind of really taken by the potential of what there was and what we had done, what we had printed. So it was really fabulous. And then we just left it there for the day, and people coming into the library, walking past the desk, would see it, and again, who hadn't seen it before. And it's very low maintenance at that point. You sort of set it up, it prints, and you can leave. So we've got another question, and that's, have we taken on extra staff or have our roles expanded? Our roles have sort of just expanded. We've just sort of accommodated our workload to this. It does get busy, we won't lie. Like, it is sort of a bit of an extra workload. I think without it being a bit too what's the word? I don't know, optimistic and nice to have you, but we do love creating, and it actually has been really enjoyable to learn how to do it. And also we're quite lucky because we do have like senior staff and managers who are really supportive of this, and who are willing to give us the time to do it, so that if we do have clashes with other tasks, that we can trying to negotiate that to give us some time to do this, and also to include more staff members as well, which has been really great because so some of the other staff members who are part of the makerspace, sort of staffing routine, are not all full-time staff, but they have really great skills that we can't, and interests that we can't replicate, and they've been, and then they're allowed to join in and sort of share those, and that's So I think. And that really is a great asset. I think that we have the support from our management to put this in practice, and even that they're the ones that had approached us to say, what could we do about a makerspace here? So yeah. So Ellen's typing. Louise is sweating.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, and please tell me if you do, I would just really like to thank Dasha and Stephanie. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed hearing your story of how it's set up, how it works. It was lovely seeing all the tools as well. So having you being able to actually show us, Tassie, do the sewing machines have names? Yeah, so thank you. I think that really highlighted the value of actually doing this as a hangout as well. So yeah, big thanks. The next hangout is on the 1st of June, and we have Lake Macquarie talking about their space. So it'll be same time of day and same YouTube channel. But yeah, really would like to thank Dasha and Steph. That was brilliant.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
it was a good chance to talk about this thing that we're a bit obsessed with.
No, it was really great. And if everyone's okay, I'll stop the broadcast now. Okay.